But our next guest is betting on a big biotech comeback in 2022. Let's bring in Jefferies analyst and managing director Michael Yee to hear more on the space. So, Michael, what changes for biotech in 2022?
Hey, it's great to be here. Great to see you, Sarah. Look, I think you're absolutely right. It was a very tough year in 2021. Might it be said after a multi-year bull market rally, but a very tough year nonetheless. I think there's two reasons why we could see a strong bounce in 2022. First is the fact that you just look at the precedents. There were multiple years in the past 10 years where we also had 18, 20% pullbacks. The following year, we bounced back 35 to 40%. People come back to the well on biotech, particularly when there wasn't anything totally bad about the sector, just a big rotation. The second thing I think you want to pay attention to, and I know there was some speculation about Biogen this week, is M&A. You see stocks down 30, 40%, but you see pharma companies with over $400 billion of cash. You got a lot of buyers out there with cash. You got a lot of biotechs that are cheaper. I generally tend to believe that deals can happen throughout the year.
It looked like that was going to start this week, but then Samsung came out and killed the story that the South Korean press was reporting about takeover talks for Biogen. Michael, who then are the targets for M&A into next year?
Yeah. Look, we'll see what happens with Biogen. I wouldn't completely rule it out. We'll see. If you want another large cap that I think people are talking about, also a stock that had a tough year, Vertex is another name that I think is equally as talked about like Biogen. So check that one out. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second. But also in the SMID caps where there's been a number of companies with huge blockbuster drugs and certainly could be a takeout. Argenx is one of them that we've talked about. BioMarin, a classic out there that's been around. Stock hasn't done a lot. Also had a recent FDA approval. So those are some of the other ones that could certainly move the needle of some of these pharma companies.
Yeah, I think Vertex is one of your turnaround plays next year, right, Michael? What else do you see?
Absolutely. So we've talked about this one specifically in the context of a very tough year where Vertex didn't have anything bad happen. They actually had a bunch of good things happen, particularly over the last 6 weeks. I know the stock has moved up from about 185 to about 220 on some recent positive pipeline data. But you look back over the last year, this was a stock trading at 260, 280 at the beginning of the year. Also on some concerns about some competitor data from AbbVie. We believe that AbbVie data is not going to be great. We believe that a lot of concerns, but ultimately not going to play out, and people refocus on the pipeline. So you get a sector that's bouncing. You get a great growth stock like Vertex moving up with pipeline data. I think that stock could easily be back up 250, 260 over the course of the year. The other one, which we've been talking about as well, a little bit out of the context, is Fate, another cancer company we've been talking about, also down 35% this year. Had nothing problematic about the data. Actually, the data was great. Seems like the stock went down every time there was data. It seemed like a liquidity event. Really tough year. You know, you put up data, stocks go down anyways. And quite frankly, we think some of that will have a much better receptivity and appetite for 2022.
Yeah, down about 36% or so over the year. Michael, finally, what about the COVID stocks? Pfizer today got news, or at least their reports, that it will be approved for boosters for teenagers. I guess the question is just how many boosters we'll need and what the demand is there around the world. What do you do with stocks like that have worked really well this year, and Moderna even better?
Yeah. Well, I think it's almost the opposite, right, Sarah? I'm hard-pressed to believe that stocks like Moderna or Pfizer, but let's focus on Moderna specifically, which was up, 140% this year, has something of the same again when we're just replicating what we've already known. We're going to have boosters. To what degree that's going to happen, well reflected in the $105 billion valuation. So I believe that what we're going to see is less focus on COVID vaccines, less focus on boosting, therefore a money flow coming out of big vaccine names that have been great performers this year. And I'd like to see less focus on COVID, more focus on some of the fundamental biotechs and a little bit of a rotation out of that. So the losers of 21, a little bit better for 22. The big winners of 21, not so much for 22. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Michael Yee from Jefferies, thanks for joining us with those calls.